Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and I'm here to wrap up the original Twilight Zone series. I've reviewed all the episodes now over the last 5 years. Yeah, yeah, 2019 is when we started doing it. I was doing it with Tara and then switched to solo during season 4. We're finally at the end. Did all the episodes, but one last thing remains, which is to do the top 10 of the final season, and maybe even the bottom 3 as well, which is what the tradition's kind of been. I did change it to a top 5 for season 4 because there was half as many episodes, but I've rustled together a top 10 of sorts. The biggest challenge in doing these, honestly, is because there's so many episodes that by the time you get to the end of a 36, 37 episode season, that trying to remember a lot of the earlier episodes in the season is a bit challenging. But I did my best. I looked through them, considered what I liked about each episode, and I think what stuck out to me as I was looking at this season is that there's not like a ton of like all timer episodes. There's a couple, but it's mostly really solid episodes, and I think that's what surprised me. I think I was worried getting into season 5 expecting it to be the weakest season just because it's maybe rehashing a lot of ideas that it's already had. Typically by the time you get to the final season and something's cancelled, it's often the case this far into a show that it's kind of running on fumes or the ideas aren't still quite there. And there's a little bit of reusing of ideas, but that's not even new. Like even like season 2 and 3 were already kind of doing that sometimes. Here, though, what I was pleasantly surprised by, and I mentioned this in the middle of the season, is that there was large blocks of episodes where they weren't like standout episodes, but they were really solid episodes with interesting ideas that maybe didn't, knock it out of the park, but were always interesting, always engaging, and it kind of made the bottom half of this top 10 quite difficult, actually, the 10 through 6 or 5 kind of section. Those were the ones that were a little bit tougher, and there was definitely some close calls of things that just didn't quite make it. As far as expectations for what you should get out of this list, I will say there's at least one thing on here that I seem to like more than the internet does, and there's a couple of well-rated episodes that I don't have in my top 10. If you remember my reviews, you'll probably be able to guess which ones those are. But yes, we'll go through. I mean, I'll try and say what they were at the end if I remember the titles when I get there. But without further ado, let's get into my top 10 episodes of the Twilight Zone season 5. So number 10 is What's in the Box. This is the episode where the sort of the couple who are fighting, the husband starts seeing his lies or his parts of his day play out on their TV set. And it shows him cheating on his wife, but then it shows the future where he's going to kill his wife. And it's him kind of reacting to that and feeling guilty about what he's done, trying to reconcile it with his wife, but that just leads to a fight that ultimately goes into kind of like what the future that the TV show was. This is just kind of a fun one that maybe falls a little bit flat at the end, which is why it's only number 10. But the premise is really solid, and I think the reactions and the way it sets up little hints and like the conversation they have, like, the episode makes it clear that they're an unhappy couple. It makes it clear that there's these little hints of like her saying, oh, he's coming home late, he's doing this, things like that. And then that's like a tease of what then is revealed on the TV. And this idea that she might walk in at any point and see the evidence that he has been cheating on her. It's a fun mechanic. It's a good character sort of episode of exploring who these two people are. And the mechanic allows it to kind of play out. There is a little bit of a tacked on kind of, not a twist, but just like a reveal of why the TV started doing it. It just felt really unnecessary. I think you could have just not had that at the very, very end. But it's kind of an interesting episode as well, because when they do actually get to the point of fighting, like it does feel like it's pushing boundaries a little bit for what you could get away with on 1960s TV shows, on network TV. I mean, at the time it was only network TV. There was no cable yet. But just the fact that they're genuinely trying to kill each other, basically. And that doesn't necessarily mean throwing punches, but like kind of like throwing things and like maybe like the vase just missing one of their heads and smashing off the wall. It felt kind of visceral for the standard of what you'd expect on a Twilight Zone episode. Like there was a lot more danger in all the movements they were doing, and like they were just not like hitting and whatever. You know, it was a far cry because I'm so used to fights in TV at this time between this show and Star Trek. Whenever anyone gets into like a fist fight or something, it tends to be really comical and really obviously fake because choreography of fight scenes just, I don't know, wasn't there yet. Like, you know, it took a while before someone tried to actually make a convincing looking fight on TV and cinema. You know, there's a lot of the back axe handles and the backhanded punches that just knock people out and silly shit like that. This felt like it was not realistic per se, but definitely felt like it wasn't pulling punches either. And I kind of appreciate that in the episode. So, yeah, that's what's in the box. Number 9 is Uncle Simon, which is an episode that's very lowly rated on IMDb, but I kind of like this one. It's not, again, it's not a standout episode by any means, but the premise of the episode being this woman who lives with her really old uncle or great uncle, whatever the exact relation was, and he is mean to her. He's awful, he's miserable, he belittles her, and she weighs on him hand and foot and hates her life, but she's doing it because she knows that she's going to inherit all of his money because he's rich when he dies. And like the episode builds up to that happening, but a lot of it's kind of like the be careful what you wish for, because it turns out he's built a robot that's effectively going to ensure that she has the same experience even once he's gone. And that's basically the episode, pretty much. I think I really liked the first half. I really liked the first half of like setting up who the characters were, what their conflict is, and then kind of the dark moment. And you know, I didn't really say spoiler warning here for this, but I should probably clarify. Yeah, I'll probably be dropping some spoilers for the episodes if that wasn't clear. She just watches him die. She lets him die. She doesn't like kill him, but when he falls down some stairs and he's like begging for help, she chooses to let him go because that's what she wants. And then her comeuppance, of course, is that there's a like to get the inheritance, the stipulation in the will, she has to maintain this robot. It'll be checked on by his lawyer and all this stuff, and it's, you know, like it's kind of a fun little thing in the second half where the robot starts talking more and more like the uncle. Like he becomes more self-aware, I guess, for lack of a better term, and it kind of becomes more like him. And she like realizes she's trapped in this eternal nightmare forever. And you can't feel too bad for her because she did do something bad in letting him die. So it's definitely, I would say it's like a sort of darkly humorous episode about characters who are not nice people. And I think it's just the right length that lets you enjoy what they're doing. Now, admittedly, I seem to like this more than most people. Maybe the sense of humor that I have with it doesn't click with other people or whatever, but I was into it. Number 8 is The Fear. This is the second last episode of the season. So this is the latest one I have. I mean, not to spoil anything, but no, the final episode is not going to be on the top 10. Maybe on another list later, though. We got number 8 is The Fear. And this is the one that is about the woman and the sheriff who gets stranded on her remote little cabin that she's living in, her little house. And there seemingly is a giant of some kind, like haunting the woods and flipping over the car and leaving big footprints around. And like she's terrified of like going into town. He sort of becomes scared over the episode. But there's a big twist ending, of course, which is that the giant's not really a giant. This is just something that tiny aliens are doing to try and scare the humans as an experiment or for whatever reason. And that's kind of like a fun little twist at the end. But even before that, it's actually just kind of a fun siege episode where they're kind of trapped in the house. They think there's something going on outside. They've been cut off from communicating with anyone. It's just a good kind of horror sci-fi style plot. And then it is kind of fun when they do try and pull off, like, oh, we're looking at a giant, only to find out it's a big balloon and it deflates. I wouldn't say, again, it's an all-timer or anything, but it's a fun episode with fun ideas, cool atmosphere, and just kind of a nice sort of jolly ending that is designed to give you a little sort of smirk. Like, it sets you up to expect one thing and then sort of like jokes that, no, it turns out the human beings are the giants relative to the aliens, which isn't necessarily a new thing for Twilight Zone, but because it was teasing the opposite the whole episode, it felt like a nice fresh twist regardless of the fact that we've had humans who are bigger than aliens before. So, cool. Number 7 is The Long Morrow, which is an episode that I kind of love the concept of. I don't think the execution is perfect. I can see like maybe a slightly better version of this episode, but the concept is so good, and a couple of the scenes are really well done. Which is it's about an astronaut who's going on this deep mission to, I don't know if it was Jupiter or somewhere, but going out somewhere. He's going to be in cryosleep, and they explain effectively what cryosleep or hibernation or whatever they're calling it in the episode is. But he falls in love with a girl right before he's about to leave, and they fall madly in love. But he's going on this trip, and because he's going to be in the suspended animation, he's going to come back pretty much the same age. He won't age on the way there. He will, he'll maybe spend a little bit of time there, and then he'll not age on the way back. But when he comes back, like 50, 70 years will have passed. Can't remember the exact number. And she, they're all sad about it, and he's really beat up about it. And the episode kind of like has him on his mission, but there's flashbacks to like how he got the mission, how he met the girl, how this was eating at him. And I actually really like the ending of the episode, which is that he chooses not to hibernate on the way back. He chooses not to go into the cryosleep so that he'll be the same age as her when he gets back. The idea being that they can be an old couple together. But the ironic twist, and it's a really nice, thoughtful thing that he does. He isn't just. I think this is the thing, is that so often Twilight Zone episodes have characters who do something out of malice or out of greed, and then they get their comeuppance. This is kind of a tragic story because what he does for a good reason. He's not being an asshole here. He's doing something out of love. It's actually very commendable. It's kind of sweet, and it's romantic that he wants to be the same age as this woman that he fell for. Of course, ignoring the fact that she might have, met a husband in that 40, 50, 60 years, whatever it is, and had a whole life, away from him. He just hoped that she would still be available and want to be with them, and he would be the same age coming back. So you can't say it's the most smart thing he ever did, but there's at least a nice, hopeful quality to it. But the twist of that episode is that when he gets back, science basically, advanced on Earth, and cryosleep, or these suspended animation chambers, became something that you could just go and do if you wanted, right? You could pay to just go into suspended animation. And it turns out this girl that he fell in love with a couple of years after he left, so she's not that much older, right? A couple of years, negligible. She went into suspended animation on Earth so that she would be the same age as him when he came back, i.e. still young. But because he didn't go into suspended animation, the cruel twist of the episode is that he comes back as an old man and she's still in her early 20s or whatever. It's a really bittersweet ending because they basically both did something for the other one, right? They both did something to ensure they could be with the other, but because they didn't match up, they can't be together, and he has to tell her to go and start a life, go live your life, find someone because you're still young, and I guess I can't do that. And it's just this. It's sad. It doesn't feel mean, and I think the reason why it doesn't feel mean is because both characters were doing it out of love, and both characters were doing it out of good intentions. The only reason why this episode isn't higher is because I think the actual falling in love part feels a little bit, just taken for granted. We're just meant to buy that after one dance and looking at each other for a second, they're in love. I just it's hard to swallow that intense of a relationship where he's willing to do this when you've only got 22 minutes, give or take, to actually tell us that and show us that. And that part of it feels a little bit rushed as a result. So that's kind of why it doesn't, isn't quite as special as I feel like as it could have been. But the ideas and the ending are really, really solid. So, and it stuck with me. I didn't even have to look up what this one was. As soon as I was going through the titles, I'm like, oh, I remember this. So that's The Long Morrow at number 7. Number 6 is Living Doll. Now, this is a very highly rated episode. I've got it maybe a little lower than I think some people would. But it's a good episode. It's a creepy episode about a doll who may or may not really be alive. But I think what I liked about it was less the horror side of it, which is effective, but more what it represents, and more it's about how this family has a new stepdad, and his relationship with the daughter that's not really his is kind of fractured. There's a lot of hints of how they feel about each other. So I think that's what I liked about it more than just the creepy stuff, is that it felt like it was always revealing things about the relationships that were there, about the family, about how he is with her, about this tension because it's not really his daughter, and then all those. That's the stuff that I liked, that I thought elevated it. The creepy stuff was fine, and It doesn't go too far with it, of course, but it's a solid episode. I actually don't have that much to really say beyond that, to be honest. I do think the performances are good. I think some of the interactions where stepdad's trying to be nice, but you can tell it's difficult for him, and then he gets really kind of paranoid, and it very much is about his fear that he'll never be the real father, that he'll never be an adequate husband to this woman because he's not really that person. So it's really about his insecurities more than it is about anything else. I mean, that's ultimately what I felt like it was about. So it felt like it was really doing some smart things and being ahead of its time in a lot of ways. So, yeah, that's Living Doll. Number 5 is Ring-a-Ding Girl, which is an episode about like a famous movie star who visits her hometown, and basically, everyone makes a fuss because everyone knows her there. She's the big star coming back to the tiny town that everyone knows who she is. But where it goes is that you think throughout the episode she's challenging like everyone for attention because there's meant to be this fair that happens every year in the town. But she says, no, why don't we all go to the high school and watch me do like a little one-woman play for everyone? And it seems like really vain, it feels egotistical. But there's little hints throughout the episode. And the ultimate story of it is that she's actually already dead, or she's in the process of dying, right? Because we find out that she was meant to be on a plane to somewhere. And what's actually happening in the episode is that in the moments of death, like her spirit, whatever you want to call it, has come down to the town to sort of meet all of her old like family members and friends again before she's gone for good. But the main purpose of it, this whole like trying to make everyone in the town not go to the fair, but instead go to the high school to watch this play, which she successfully does, and her sister chastises her for it and says she's been egotistical. It turns out the reason why she did that is because the plane crash that she was in lands where the fair was going to be. Like the people in the town would have all died in this horrific accident, and she was basically saving like her hometown, like all the people in her hometown. It's a fun episode, I thought, because I thought it like the intrigue is always there. I think as soon as it starts hinting that there's something else going on, she has these little moments where she'll like hear the sound of a plane engine, or she'll see something on the TV that's not really there, but they're all hints of where she actually is, that she's on a plane, and that her magic ring or something is actually like letting her be down here as well to try and. So it's kind of like her one day goodbye or one final day before she's dead, but she's doing something with a purpose, and like kind of the realization for the sister at the end that her dead sister, her now deceased sister, might have just saved everyone's lives by doing this. It was kind of a nice little twist. It was like a feel-good twist after a tragedy. It was kind of like an interesting concoction of feelings. But I liked it. I think this felt like it was maybe not like a super deep episode, but I think the twist and what she's there for really recontextualize like how, because throughout the episode she really wants to have this play going, and it does feel like she is being kind of egotistical, but you realize that deep down the reason why she's actually doing it, even if she doesn't know this, is to make sure they don't go to that location for the fair. So like in hindsight, you look at all of the way she was acting, and you look at the how determined she was, and you get that she was desperate because she knew something bad was going to happen, that something was wrong. So it's a fun twist in that sense, because I do think it'll hold up well in a rewatch. So that was a good one. I thought Ring-a-Ding Girl was a good time. Number 4 is Stopover in a Quiet Town. This is an episode about a couple who wake up with a hangover after having been out for the evening. But they're in a house that they don't recognize, and they're in a town that they don't recognize, and they walk around and they can't find anyone. Things are weird, and then throughout the episode, they start to notice that everything in the town's kind of fake. Like the grass on the ground is actually like they can pick it up, and it's like like fake grass that's been placed onto metal or something like that. It's like they're on a big TV set or something. There's lots of fake things. The vehicles don't have engines in them, and it's a fun mystery. The character, the couple bickering, and like again, it kind of reveals a lot about their marriage, how they're fighting backwards and forwards. So the twist of this, actually, which is kind of the opposite of an episode that I already talked about, is that they've been abducted by aliens, and some alien has given them as a present, as a set of playthings, toys to their alien daughter. So you basically, the twist is that they're actually on like a model town, or like a child's play town, and they look up and they see this giant child who's playing with them and like picking them up and moving them wherever she wants. But there's a lot of cool little hints, like there's a train track on this town, and they get to the train and they think, oh, we finally got out of the town, but it's actually, it just goes in a circle, which makes complete sense. It's a really cool hint for what they're actually doing, because if you have a model train set on like a little model town, it would just be going some kind of circle. That's a real thing that people do. People are into trains, they do that sort of thing. So I thought I just, much like Ring a Ding Girl, I just thought this was a really fun episode with a cool twist that played with its visuals once it started getting to the stuff later on. But I liked how all the hints kind of really felt natural throughout. Like all of the things that, like, the twist answered why everything that was weird, and nothing felt like lingering, like, oh, that part didn't make sense. Everything kind of felt like it naturally fit into it, and the mystery was indeed intriguing throughout. So let's stop over in a quiet town. Number 3 is an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Now, this is an interesting episode because it was originally like a short film that was made in a different country that they just decided to like bring in and display as a Twilight Zone episode and present it to the world. This is one where I think the story is not that like deep, and well, that's maybe not the right way of putting it. There's not much to the story, and I think the twist for a modern audience is very predictable. But the reason why this is good, though, is more so just the filmmaking, and it really sticks out as something that was made by another group of people that aren't part of the Twilight Zone show, because it really emphasizes good cinematography, good editing. And that's not to say that the Twilight Zone never has any of those things, but this just had such a different, distinct style, a different pacing, different kind of ideas. Ultimately, just to spoil it and say what it is it's this man who's being hanged on the bridge, but he escapes at the last second and tries to run back to where his wife and family are. But the reveal at the end is that this is all just his imagination in the moment before he dies. So at the very end of the episode, it just snaps back to him getting hanged and he dies. That's it. Like, that's the story. And it's just, it's mostly, there's not a lot of dialogue. It's mostly him running and surviving. I think especially the first 5 or so minutes are excellent, filmmaking. The tension building up to him getting hanged, and then him getting into the water, and like them trying to find him and shoot him, and him trying to swim away. All of that stuff is exceptionally well done, and I think that's the stuff that's really good. And the ending's pretty solid too. And the ending feels like it fits the tone. Like, it feels like, yeah, this feels natural that this is how this story's ending. So, but it is well done, and it really sticks out as being different from the other episodes, but more so just being so extremely well made. Doesn't have as much like twists and turns and like as much ideas like being thrown at it as some Twilight Zone episodes does, but the way it presents the one big idea that it has is very, very strong. Number 2 is Number 12 Looks Just Like You. That rhymed. I did not mean that. So, yeah, this is a really cool episode where it's set in the future, and it's about this idea that in the future, young people, when they're 19, have to pick from a catalogue of approved bodies, and they will become one of these people. And Number 12, I think in this case, is, I assume, what she picked in the episode. I'd have to go back and check. But the idea being that you have to look like everyone else, you have to conform. So it's very much a sort of future that seems pleasant, but is actually very dystopian. It's very much about the powers that be controlling who everyone is. When the main character in the episode says she doesn't want to like go through her transformation and become someone else, she wants to be her, she wants to be an individual, they all treat her like she's a psychopath, and that she has got radical ideas, that she is spreading, like, I don't know, heresy or something. Like, and everyone, the doctor, her friend, her mother, every single one of them tries to talk her into it and says, you have a choice, but you should really do it. But then she's basically forced into it anyway. And it's a whole thing. So, sorry, my phone's dinging at me. Like, I really like this because I like these types of stories. Your kind of your Fahrenheit 451 type things. Your cyberpunky type stories, and obviously most of this just takes place in a few different rooms. But it's the idea of her picking a body out of a catalog, and that there's literally millions of people who will look exactly like her, and they claim there's health benefits, and you'll have like lots of other benefits, and that everyone looking attractive and kind of the same very much has put an end to wars and things like that. There's been no trouble. All the things that used to plague humanity is all gone because we all look the same. We all have like there's like 6 different types of men. There's 6 different types of women, and that's it. That's everyone. And everyone, from what I can remember from the episode, I'm pretty sure they were all white people, which would have been like a wild swing to take if they, and maybe they might have even wanted to do this, but having the main character not be white and have them be told you have to become one of these people. Now, they don't actually broach that subject, but you can maybe assume that in the world that would happen. Now, admittedly, I don't remember if any of the options were people of color, but I don't think they were. But even though it does feel like this, that's what the subtext is. It's about conforming and being the same as everyone else and not being an individual. And it's very much. It's weird to say this, but thematically, it goes right next to Night of the Living Dead, even though the story and the type of like characters are all completely different. But this idea of not being what the powers that be, that the machine, that you're not going to be the cog that they want you to be in their system, that you want to be different and speak for yourself and have your own ideas. That's dangerous to the system. It's dangerous to the government. So it's presented as a choice, but it's not really. And she's effectively forced into it. By the end of the episode, and it's this, it's a sad ending where she is now just another one of these people who looks the exact same and talks the exact same as well. Like even her personality feels like it's been altered to act like everyone else and speak in the same kind of happy robotic tone that everyone's expected to. So yeah, I really like this one. I thought it was a really good concept. I thought it was handled very well, and I think there was no missteps for me in the episode. It really felt like it had an idea, it explained it clearly, I got the subtext, and it had kind of the right downer ending of the tragedy of her not being able to break free of it. It was very good. Perfect for the runtime of an episode. So great. And then number 1, I'm not going to beat around the bush. You could probably guess what it's going to be. And I really questioned, like, does anything come close to challenging this episode? Because it would be, nice and controversial to not have it be at number 1. But honestly, when I really sat and thought about it, I couldn't really come up with any episode that I just mentioned beating Nightmare at 20,000 feet. It's probably the most famous Twilight Zone episode, and for good reason. It's tense, Shatner's very memorable in the role, simple premise, there's a man in a plane, he's scared of flying, and he starts to see some creature on the wing. Now, the one big negative watching it now is that, yes, the creature itself looks pretty terrible, right? Like, it's one of the things that I've since seen the movie version of this story, and yeah, the creature looks much better in the movie. Like, they actually made it feel much more dramatic and kind of gnarly and beastly and whatever. This guy is basically in a fursuit in this episode. But even with that though, like, the way it progresses, the way Shatner's paranoia builds, him trying to convince himself it's not there, people try to talk him down, all the way up to him trying to rob an air marshal's gun so that he can kill the beast on the wing. He really comes across as a crazy person. I almost wish that the end of the episode didn't hint that it was all true. I wish it was completely ambiguous if the thing was real or not, if it was just in his head. But again, even with those like little nitpicks or me saying I kind of wish this or I kind of wish that, it doesn't take away from just how good the actual pacing, the tension, and the build-up of him responding to what he's seeing on the wing is. It's exceptionally well done. There's a reason why this was remembered so well. There's a reason why they picked this to be one of the remade stories in the movie. And, it's one of the most iconic episodes, arguably the most iconic episodes. Obviously, yes, there's Time Enough at Last. There's Monsters of June Maple Street. There's a few other big ones that get brought up a reasonable amount at the time. But this is the one that before I ever knew anything about Twilight Zone, I knew there was an episode with this premise. Pop culture just had it everywhere. It was just the thing. So there you go. There's the top 10 of season 5 of Twilight Zone. And just to wrap up, I will quickly also say my bottom 3, my worst 3 episodes of the season. I will say there was a bit of a fight for number 3 here because I was really tempted to put, I think it's called Probe 7 Over and Out. And the reason why I didn't put this one on the bottom 3, I edged it out to one other option, is purely just because, while I do think that episode was really terrible and boring to watch, it at least had a little bit of interest because it clearly was the genesis of an idea that would become Planet of the Apes, which is interesting historically because Rod Serling went on to do that movie. That's the only reason why it didn't make this bottom 3, because it was very close with another episode. And that episode at number 3 is Sounds and Silence, which is just, it's an annoying episode about this character who is a dick to everyone, and he, makes lots of loud noises, he pisses everyone off with it, and he starts to go deaf. And that's his comeuppance. And that part also feels kind of weird in hindsight, that his comeuppance is that he gets a disability. Feels like it's almost like they never stopped to think, oh, we're just giving him a regular disability. This is not some supernatural thing. Real people do actually just go deaf, and maybe we shouldn't be treating that like something that someone deserves. It's just a bit weird. It's a bit weird conceptually, and then it's also quite annoying to actually watch because the character is irritating. So I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I'm making these ones quick. Number 2 is the final episode of the season, and that is the Bewitching Pool. I don't love the premise that much, which is, children go into a magic portal in a pool to potentially a home where they can get away from their parents who are not very good. They're the kind of shitty parents because they're always fighting, and they're not abusive to the kids or anything like that, but they definitely don't think about the kids. They're kind of an afterthought to them. That part is fine. I don't love the concept, but at least, there's nothing wrong with it. However, the fact that the episode clearly was short on time and had to almost repeat almost 4 minutes of the episode twice by showing it at the start of the episode and then showing it again when it got to that point in the story at the end, it really felt like padding to me, and it felt really kind of shoddily put together because of that. Yeah, and it doesn't add anything, but the second time you get there, it just feels like, we're repeating all the exact same footage because the episode was only 18 minutes long and we had to bump it up somehow. So this is what we did. We showed the ending at the start and then showed the ending again. So there you go. That's number 2. Number 1 is an episode called Come Wander With Me, which was also pretty near the end of the season, actually. It may have been the third last episode. This is an episode about a sort of rock star, or a rock and roll star, maybe more precisely, not rock in the more common modern sense. An Elvis wannabe goes looking for songs to buy off of a musician in the middle of nowhere, and ends up in the forest where there's a weird story where he falls in love with a woman who knows he's going to die, and then he does die because he tries to stand up against a couple of guys with guns or something. I'll be honest, it's actually shocking that this episode was very recently for me. This was, like I say, it was 3 or 4 episodes before the end, so it wasn't that long ago, and I could not tell you now what the plot beats of the episode were. I just vaguely remember him having a lot of boring stuff in the woods, singing with this girl who wants to leave this place, but he keeps sticking around because he wants the song or he wants his guitar or whatever, and then he ends up dying. And it's just, there was nothing fulfilling about it. I didn't really like much of what it was doing in terms of its story. I didn't like really the characters. I didn't really like, I found it a very unpleasant and unfulfilling episode, and maybe there was a layer that I was missing that would have made it better for me or something, but yeah, Come Wander With Me was an episode that sounded bad before I watched it, and then it was, for me, easily the worst episode of the whole season. But obviously, you might disagree with that. You might have some other picks that you'd rather do. I know a lot of people hate Sounds and Silence, and I had that at number 3. But, as far as other ones that I liked that, got close, oh God, I'm blanking all the names now, but, there was a bunch that were just kind of missing the cut that were not bad, and had some fun things in them. like, you know, the hit and run driver whose car kind of haunts him afterwards. Uh, you know, that was a solid episode that just kind of missed the cut. There was a few more around that kind of range where good episodes, but I kind of went with the ones that I did just because they spoke to me just a little bit extra. But there you go. That's my my final Twilight Zone video for the old show. It's been quite a journey. You know, I lost a co-host about 2/3 or so in, and it's taken 5 years, a long ass time. I'm glad that I've watched the show though now. It feels like a part of pop culture that I really wanted to have under my belt. I wanted to, be aware of, not that I'm going to remember every single thing and get every reference that anyone ever makes to it, but it did feel like a big thing. As someone who considers himself a science fiction fan, it felt weird to have not seen Twilight Zone. So I'm glad that I've done that. I'm glad that I've went through the whole thing. And if you've not checked out the new reviews yet, I have also been reviewing the 80s version of Twilight Zone. It's a Patreon sponsored review, but I've been doing the 80s Twilight Zone twice a month for the last few months now. And so I'm a good chunk into season 1, and that's been interesting. If I just got to an episode that had a remake of one of the original show's episodes, that's the first time I'd encountered that. But I suspect that it's going to happen again. Apparently it happens a fair bit throughout the show. So yeah, you can check out that. And I mentioned that I'd watched the movie. That's because on my sci-fi movie podcast that I do with David over in Male Fuzz Movies, if you've not checked out that channel, there's 3 different movie podcasts on there. They're all just movie review discussions. We did the Twilight Zone about a month or 2 ago, which was just kind of timed because I knew that I was getting to the end of this show and I was starting the 80s show. It felt like a good time to get the movie in. So if you want to hear my thoughts on that, I'll make sure that's linked at the end of the video if you want to go see what my thoughts on the movie were. But and David hadn't seen any of the show, so it's 2 very different perspectives getting into the movie. So if that sounds like fun, go check out that. But anyway, thank you very much for joining me, especially if you've been around for all this journey on classic Twilight Zone. Hopefully you also like the idea of the 80s Twilight Zone being reviewed, or if not that, I'm doing X-Files, I'm doing Person of Interest, some new shows that as they come out that are interesting. Penguin's quite good right now. Obviously it's a very different show, but worth mentioning. You can support all the content over at patreon.com/MaleFuzzTV. I wouldn't be able to do all the reviews on both channels if it wasn't for Patreon. Or YouTube membership's also an option if you would like to do that. But that is me. Thank you very much for joining me. Let me know what your favorite episodes of Twilight Zone Season 5 are. I will see you guys for something else soon, depending on what you're interested in. But thank you very much. Goodbye. Keep watching TV in the Twilight Zone.